Yeah. We're ready now? Okay. We're missing a couple. They're on vacation, going down to visit Mark's aunt. We want to remember them in prayer for safe travels down there and back, and bless his aunt. Bless his aunt because Mark's coming to visit her. Any other prayer requests other than we still remember Clarence and Betty, Mary Porter, and Jean Steele?
We want to remember Betty Lucas here. She's flying to Florida on Thursday.
Oh, okay. Are you taking the plane or are you just...
Yeah, I'm taking the plane.
Okay. Where you visit relatives?
My daughter.
Okay, good, good. Well, let's go to prayer. Father, first off, we're just so thankful that you're with us. We're so thankful, Lord, that you care about what we're doing on Sunday nights. Lord, and today we're going to talk a little bit about building the church and the difference between building a temple and building the church. I pray, Lord, that we would have a good discussion, that we would all walk away from here this evening a little bit more knowledgeable about you and a little bit closer to you, each and every one of us, just a step or two closer to you than we were when we came in. We want to pray for Mark and Anita for safe travel mercies for them, for Clarence and Betty. Clarence needs to gain some strength. Betty's going to have some eye surgery here at the end of the month. Mary Porter is having some problems with her foot. And Lord, we just pray that you would touch her and Jean. Touch them physically, Lord. Let them know that their church is praying for them. Not just once in a while, but on a daily basis. As we remember them, we'll say a silent prayer just so that they can know that their church family is calling on you on their behalf. We think of Betty, give her safe travels, Lord, as she's flying to Florida to see her daughter. Pray that you would get her there safely, have a good visit, and bring her back. We pray for our session tonight. We give you all the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. The thing that we want to talk about tonight, the main point is don't give up on the work that God has called us to do. Now, first off, I want to ask you, what has God called us to do in Taylorville? Not everybody at once. I can't hear you all. So
Make disciples.
Pardon?
Make disciples.
Make disciples. Anything else? I mean, is God calling us to be a mega church where we go out and buy 40 acres at the edge of town and build a 2,000 seat auditorium? And that'd be nice, I guess, but I don't really think that's what God's calling, at least not yet anyway. Now, he may change our minds, but we need to think, what does God want, as Pastor says, in my little circle of influence, my little sphere of influence, what does God want me to do in Taylorville? And what I do can or cannot have any bearing on what you do. In other words, Tom may have one thing that he needs to do for this church, and Ricky has something completely different. But it's all to bring glory to God, to bring other people into a relationship with him, making disciples. So I think that we all have our job to do, and we need to focus on what God wants me to do now at this place. I saw not too long ago, probably on Facebook, on somewhere, that we should never determine why we were born, where and when we were. I've heard people say that, well, I wish I'd been born, years ago. I would have put up with some of the hardships, but we had the glory of God come down. When Brazil started the church, they built a shed, called it the Glory Barn. And people would really like to be able to see that. But God had me born in Taylorville in 1946. I shouldn't wish that I was born earlier or later because of whatever, because God didn't make any mistakes. He put you right where he wants you to be now. So we got to keep that in mind. No matter how fruitless our efforts appear to be, God is at work in you and through you building his church. not only is he in us, but he uses us and extends his love through us. People are not going to, very seldom will somebody go to a hotel room and pick up a Bible and start reading it and get saved. It has happened. It'll happen in the future. But that's not normally how it does. It's usually through an interpersonal relationship with somebody they already know, or through a new acquaintance. It seems like that's the way that it works. We need to respond gratefully for the gift of God and his presence in us. That's a hard concept, that the Holy Spirit is living in me. And I know in Paul's one of Paul's writings, he talked about the mystery of the gospel. And he said the mystery is God in you. How can an infinite being reside in a finite being? I don't know, but I know he does. And that's all, we don't have to explain everything. I can't explain electricity. I can't explain atomic power, but I'll use the results of it. We need to face forward, resisting the temptation to look back at past achievements or to look around and to compare ourselves to others. Unfortunately, I think back to past services here at home and wonder what we are doing differently. I know there's a different church culture, there's a different societal culture, there's a societal evolution. People do not think the same way now that they did 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The mindset of the general population is so much different than it was then. The message has to be the same, but we may have to deliver it in a different way. Any question, anytime you got somebody got to say something, don't raise your hand, just jump in. I usually don't have to tell you that. Have you ever looked back on a season of your life or an achievement and thought to yourself, my best years are behind me, I'll never be that good again? That was my peak, it's downhill from here on out. Have any of you ever thought that? I've never felt that way. I really haven't. I had a job one time where I was making $80,000 a year salary. And not too long after that, I was making about $35,000 a year. But not once did I think back that I was on the downhill slide. Maybe it's our personality, but I still think that I was where God wanted me to be at that particular point of time in my life. God's people reckon they will never replicate the magnificence of the previous temple, so they can't be bothered to keep going with the work of rebuilding it. God sees their work in a completely different way. God's views versus mankind's views. Now, we've got these papers, and I want you to think about these as we watch this session too. It takes about 9 minutes or so. Probably didn't take that long to get this thing fired up again. That'll show me.
We're journeying through the book of Haggai, and we've got to the second message God gives to his people in chapter 2, verse 1 to 9. At the end of the first message, God's people had started building the temple after returning home from captivity. They'd obeyed God, gathered resources, and started work on the foundations. But less than a month later, the work comes grinding to a halt. They're discouraged and unhappy. Why? Because all they can think about is how glorious the previous temple used to be before it was destroyed. Less than 70 years ago, the temple stood in the exact same spot. It was the great achievement of King Solomon. And for centuries, it stood as the centerpiece of God's presence with his people. The temple was incredible. Gold upon gold upon gold. But just look at the temple now. There's a few stones and bits of wood. The people are only on the foundations. It's nothing compared to what it once was. It feels hopeless. Surely it will never look like that again. So what's the use? The glory of Solomon's temple can't be matched, not even close. So the people stop building. They're discouraged. Every Christian, by default, is part of building God's church today. And I'm sure you felt that same disappointment at times. Whether it's in the local church you're part of, or even in your own personal work with the Lord, you work and work, but the result is nothing. You pour yourself out, but the fruit is so small. Maybe you look back to the good old days and see how stunning they were. God's church thrived. Christians were on fire for the Lord. Thousands were saved every day. Evangelists just had to speak, and people accepted Jesus there and then. Churches grew, ministries flourished. But now, things seem hopeless. God's church is declining. It's a real surprise when one person is saved. Students and young people are leaving the church. Friends and neighbours are stubborn to the gospel. Your heart feels far from the life of faith you want to live. Or maybe you look around and see glory elsewhere. The church down the road that is way bigger than you, with the famous leaders who are so captivating in their words. The sister or brother who has an incredible faith. They seem to grow in their love for God every day and are so passionate in serving the Lord. And then there's you. You feel weak. Your church seems insignificant. And if you're honest, you're tempted to quit and give up any hope or vision that you had for your church or for your faith. God says to you these comfortable words. I know what you're going through. I understand it's hard. But let me give you a reality check. Let me encourage you with truth that will keep you going. And the first truth God speaks to you is this: I am with you. Notice who it is saying these words in verse 4. It's the Lord Almighty. 14 times in Haggai, God is referred to in this way. It's a name for God that reminds us he has total control over all powers that exist. This is the God of armies who is strong beyond measure. He's not like idols. He's the true, living God who has ultimate, actual control over all things. And this God is with you. The power of God shown in his presence with you. Even in spite of the people not having a temple, God is with them. And not just at arm's length, but in deep, close, personal relationship, God and his people together. Time and time again, God uses this promise of his presence to encourage his people. To Moses at the burning bush, God says, I am with you. To Joshua, when he takes over leadership of Israel, God says, I am with you. To Mary, called to be the mother to the Son of God, God sent an angel to say, I am with you. At the end of his great commission to all believers through all ages, Jesus says, I am with you. Forget about this building for a minute. You're getting distracted by what it's going to look like with the details. Remember me. Remember who I am. Remember what I'm bringing about for you. I'm with you even though you've disobeyed me. I'm with you even though there's no temple. God's people thought they were constructing a building made of physical wood and physical stone. They thought it could never match up to the glory of the previous temple. But God saw their work differently. He knew that this temple would be even more glorious. And then we get this description in verse 6 and 7 of how God is going to shake everything. the heavens, the earth, the sea, the dry land, the nations. It comes up again later in the chapter, but it points us to God's final judgment. He warns his people that anything outside of his building project will be shaken and destroyed. Then, God's chosen people, the treasured and desired of all nations, will come into the eternal temple of God in his new creation. And he is going to fill that place with his glory. See, the people were looking down at their tiny glory. They were comparing it to a better glory in the past. But God wanted them to remember the best glory to come. This glorious temple will one day outdo all the temples that existed before, because it will be God himself and the Lamb in perfect relationship with his people. See, God has an eternal view on things, and he wants that for you too, because this life is not all there is. When you look at your church, it might seem weak. When you battle with sin and struggle with holiness, you might feel weak. You have a rubbish day and simply want to pack it all in. Remember God's words to you. And he says this, listen, don't give up. Be strong. Yeah, your work may look weak. Yeah, you may feel weak. But you are bringing about something even more glorious than you can imagine. So be strong and work. And remember that I'm with you by my Spirit. And I want to say this, you build more than you see. God will take the fruit of your work, however weak and insignificant it or you are, and he will make it glorious beyond anything you can ever dream of. Don't judge by what you can see now. Don't look back to glory in the past or glory elsewhere. Look forwards to glory to come. Because in 20 trillion years, when you look around and see people praising Jesus in that glory, you'll remember how you played a tiny part to help other people do that. Don't give up. Be encouraged. Be strong and work. It is well worth it. God's church will be the most glorious thing ever.
That's what we're going to talk about, building God's church. Now, as you was reading this, or listening to this, those handouts I gave you, why do God's people feel that the rebuilding of the temple is hopeless?
It'll never be as good as it was.
Yeah, we just, one thing, it's not going to be as good as it once was. Any other?
They were discouraged.
Discouraged? Why were they discouraged?
Because it wasn't going to be what they thought it would be.
That could be, yeah.
Yes, what I was going to say, along with those two thoughts, they were looking back instead of looking ahead.
Yeah. One of the things I think was, it's just too big of a job. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the resources. We don't have what it takes to do this. And I think sometimes in today's society, we look at the people that we know need a right relationship to God, and you think, there's so many of them. How do we can't handle it all. It's too big of a job. It is for one person, but it's not too big of a job for God.
No, but they were dependent on their own.
Right,
Not
yeah,
God.
yeah. And I think a lot of times we look at something and think, what can I do to fix that or whatever, instead of asking God, okay, God, what can you do through me to fix whatever it is?
Exactly.
It may sound silly, but when I've been working on the house, I've been doing a lot of physical labor, which I don't like, especially now. But there's times when I literally ask God in prayer, give me the physical strength to get through this. And he did. I mean, I've been down on my hands and knees, quite frankly, for the last 4 days. And my knees really don't hurt. My muscles are a little sore. But I didn't do it all on my own. I had to have help. And that's the only one I could turn to ask for. Why do we sometimes feel discouraged in our work of building God's church even today? And I coined a new word in this answer. So why do we sometimes feel discouraged when we're building God's kingdom?
I think we get caught up in the numbers game. And I think it's because we need to just focus on one person at a time. And really, I think the temple building we need to be thinking about, it's not a building, it's about temple building that person
Right.
to the lordship of Jesus Christ.
Those people, when, looking back on Solomon's temple, their perspective was skewed and wrong because they were looking back, as people often do, about the good old days.
Yeah.
And, some of those days were good, but they weren't all good. And when it came to looking back at that temple, Solomon's temple was a glorious building project, but it wasn't too long after, it didn't even endure Solomon's life before Israel starts going off the rails into idolatry.
Yeah.
And so what that temple do for him? There were some good kings of Judah, but there was a bunch of them that were just terrible. That's why they were in exile, because they'd gone off into idolatry. So what had that temple done for them? Nothing.
It gave them a place to go.
They were looking at it as a point of pride.
Right.
We don't like this because it doesn't look as good as that, because it reminded them of their sin and failure.
Yes.
You know, and I wrote, sometimes we don't see the results that we believe we should see.
Lack of seeability.
Yes.
That's my new word, seeability. The lack of seeability results. We must remember what we see is vastly different than what God sees. We are, like I said, we're looking for numbers. We're looking for this. We're looking for that. What's God looking at?
You know, and Danny, it's not always the numbers, it's like Tom says, it's souls.
Yeah.
You know, I always feel like, am I doing enough? And I think that's where a lot of times we do worry about numbers. I wonder why we're not seeing people come.
Yeah.
And then they come, then they leave. You know, what are we doing wrong? Because if they're not staying, what are we doing wrong? And it's not always something we're doing wrong.
Oh, no. And a lot of times we're not doing anything wrong. It's just that sometimes people don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
And you know, too, back when we were kids, that was the thing to do, to go to church.
Mm-hmm.
That was, even people that didn't serve the Lord, really, a lot of people, that was the thing to do. You went to church.
I mentioned that in Sunday school this morning, that 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago, I don't go to church. I know I ought to.
Yeah.
And I admire the people that do, but, that just... Now, you mentioned church, what's that? Oh, that's that building over there. I don't know what they do. I've never been in a church. And there's times when Rebecca and I took wedding pictures, I think there were times when we met people that the only time they'd been in a church was for a wedding.
But back when I was younger, and I was in the church. I had come to church and then got out of it.
Right.
After my father passed away. I use that as an excuse, but that's not really the excuse. I knew that my mom would not be able to make me go.
Right.
And that's bothered me all my life since my mom passed away, that I wish I had listened to her. But back then, you didn't care what they thought.
Yeah.
You just did what you wanted to do and you just went on.
Yeah.
But now that my mind and my heart's been woken up, I knew that I was wrong by being the way I was, but I'm, praise the Lord every day that He's brought me where I am today.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
I think if we remember about how like some plant the seed, some sow, some water, you
Right.
know, the things that we're doing, if they leave and never come back, we've sown a seed, because they come here and they hear truth,
Yeah.
and that can't be taken away.
That's
So-
true.
So we just don't see the end maybe of what comes of what we do.
I think, and probably all churches are like this, but I've seen people that have been here for a year or two, and then they don't show up. They may move out of state, move out of town, they may move across the street, but they quit coming. But yet, I still think, like you said, somewhere down the line, they're going to remember that service or two, or those 2 years or 5 years or whatever. That you can't forget that.
Yeah.
When you're confronted with the truth, especially truth given in love, you can't just disregard that. I mean, once a seed is planted, it's really hard to just dig it up and throw it away.
Exactly.
I mean, it's possible, but for all practical purposes, when a seed is planted, when the seed of the truth is planted in someone's heart, you can't just disregard it. You can't dig it up and unlearn it or unsee it.
And that too then is why we have to be careful that we take every opportunity, because it might be that person's only time to be here.
Yeah.
And if we just are lazy that day, or, you know, then.
Or you're in a bad mood,
But you know, we've always said too, if the seed's been planted, and they do come back, then it's our job to help them feel like they're wanted in our church.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of times, not in the last few years, but before, we didn't even think about it. I mean, some were, and some of us weren't. We were just glad to see they were here.
Right.
We didn't follow up with them like we used to, take them out to eat and stuff like that. We didn't do that back then, but we do now.
I laugh because Bob and I talked about this. We had, Rosie and I have done this in the past, have a young couple or come into church. And, hey, we're glad to see you here. Why don't you come and have lunch with us? And we'll take them out to lunch, and we haven't seen them since.
Yeah,
And that has happened more than once.
yeah.
But yet,
Did you make them pay or what?
no, I paid for the whole thing. But I mean, some of them, we've never seen them since.
Yeah.
But that seed is in there.
Yeah.
They knew that somebody cared enough about them that they wanted them in church. They were willing to spend their own money and take us out and give us a nice lunch. And that seed is there. Now, some of them I do know have gone to other churches. Some of them have no idea where they are.
I think, though, you've talked about that, and you've taught about it, about that void that God's already equipped us with. He's put a void for God in
Right.
us, and it's our job to help sow, and He's going to bring the harvest, of course, but, you know, it's trying to feed that hole that they need to fill that
Right.
hole.
Yeah, we just have to introduce them to our God.
Yeah, and I think they get scared because they don't want to change. They want to live both lives.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the way I was years ago when I was younger. I wanted to be able to come to church with my mom and still go out and do what I wanted to do.
Right.
And that's not the way God wants you to be.
You can do that. You just can't be a Christian and do that.
But I think also, we've talked about that before, one of the problems is so many generations now are missing any touch of God in their families.
Yeah.
Right.
And it starts in Genesis when they understand who the Creator is, and God was the Creator of all humans. That's why you can argue abortion. God intended for that person to be here, or they wouldn't be here, because only God creates.
Yeah.
And so, from that standpoint, to me, it's something that's missed. We haven't taught people well enough to understand you were created by God. And once they know that's there, then everything else falls into, or you can start building on that.
I was going to say, when you said that some people come and, you know, they leave because they just want to do this, or didn't want to commit or whatever, and that's true, but you need to remember that when the enemy then starts saying, well, what'd you do wrong? You must have done something wrong. No, I didn't do anything wrong. They exercised their free will.
Yeah.
I mean, we're responsible to obey God. Jesus said, I will build my church.
Yeah.
Yes.
with or without you.
Yeah.
He wants us to help.
Right.
But I don't care where it is, if the congregation starts just growing like crazy, someone will then say, man, that preacher, that guy's really good. I hope that he doesn't hear that, because he might believe it.
Yeah.
That's not,
Read your own press clippings.
I don't,
It's God, not
I'm concerned that I would ever get credit for something like that, because I don't want to be deceived, and also because, frankly, I don't want to take the blame when it's the other way.
Yeah.
I just want to be faithful to do what God said to do, and that's true for all of us.
Yeah.
When you invite someone, or when you try to witness to your neighbor, when you deal with your own kids, some accept, some reject. All you can do is all you can do, and it's not our job. God didn't call us to guilt.
Yeah. The next thing is we're talking about discouragement. What is God's response to our discouragement?
Do not fear, I am always with you.
Do you remember the T-shirts years and years ago showed this guy walk along, had the Bigfoot out there, keep on trucking? That's exactly what he wants us to do. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
And we're going to make mistakes, and God knows that. But He also knows that if we don't do anything, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
And I don't think He looks as favorable on that as He would if you just keep trying your best.
It's like that song, I think it was Nina Haynes sang it years ago. What if we're the only Jesus?
The what?
What if we're the only Jesus
Right.
Yes.
that other people see? Whether it's stopping at this homeless sign that somebody's holding, okay, I know a lot of people don't ever do that, but that's between you and God. But what if that dollar you give them, what if that's the only time they see Jesus, and that's all I think He's calling us to do.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the only sermon that they're ever going to hear is the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
The people were so quick to give up on building projects. Have you ever given up on a project almost before it got started? In hindsight, did you regret not seeing it through? I don't know if I know there's projects I think, well, to do that, but I've never really had a project that I planned out and then thought, oh man, that's too big for me. I better, I would either modify the plan. In wood turning, they say that there is never any mistakes. It's just a design opportunity. And I've used that before because I was going to make a bowl this tall. And something happened, and now I got a bowl that's this tall. Then pretty soon I have a platter that's about this thick, But I didn't make any mistakes. I just redesigned it on the fly.
Yeah.
But I really don't think that I've ever planned something like that and then
Just do it away.
yeah, and then well, I wish I'd have done. Now there are things that I wish that I had done differently, but I don't think, according to this, what this question is, have you ever given up on a project almost before it got off the ground? I don't know if anybody's ever done that or not.
Are you saying you don't know if anyone's done that?
No, I don't think I've done that.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I can give you 1,000 examples.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I've really ever done that. It starts something and then realize that it's such a big job that I just can't do it and just forget it. And then later on think, man, I wish I had completed that. I wish I'd have gone ahead and done that. I'm sure that I have, I just can't. That's the good thing about getting old. You don't think about these things. You forget a lot of this stuff.
I'm just sitting there thinking that reading about their discouragement and all is just confirmation that people really haven't changed much ever. These bunch of whiners and complainers, they could have read their own history. When Solomon's temple was built, It was built with conscripted labor.
Slaves.
And his son
Yeah.
was like, so your father laid heavy burdens on us and heavy taxes and everything else. Well, the glory, that's like looking at the pyramids and wishing you could build one too. Well, you can't if you got enough slaves. I mean, they were wanting something that they really were just talking.
Yeah.
They didn't want to commit the work that it took and the price that it took. They just liked the result. But I mean, seriously, you go back and read in 1 Kings, that was one of the main reasons that the kingdom split, because when Solomon's son came along, the people were like, man, you got to give us some relief on all the taxes and all the stuff that happened. And that was all from Solomon's building the temple and his own palace.
He says, my little finger's going to be thicker than my father's leg.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give. Read that. It's in 1 Kings. No. 1 Kings or 2 Kings? 1 Kings. The people remembered the golden glory days of the previous temple. Why had they forgotten about the presence of God? And I mentioned this earlier. God is in us, but God's presence was in the Holy of Holies, not within them, because the Holy Spirit hadn't arrived. For them to have God's presence was to have a Holy of Holies where God's presence could reside. But had they really realized, because I think it was David, when he wanted to build the temple, God told him, he says, I've lived in this tent, this tabernacle for years. I've never asked anybody to build me a temple. I've never asked for anything. The world is my temple. And I think that they forgot the fact that God, I think maybe they was trying to put God in a box. If I can get God in this little Holy of Holies, they don't have to be there once a year. I can send one guy in there once a year and we'll be okay. So I don't think that they was really thinking about God's presence outside of the temple itself. How has comparison stopped you from pursuing the call of God on your life? Do you tend to compare yourself to others and what they are currently doing or achieving? Or do you tend to compare your current efforts to your past accomplishments? I've got a little of both. I'm to the age that I don't compare myself with others anymore. Quick question. Why do we always compare ourselves with something that is greater than ourselves? Why don't we compare, we're running 40, 50 people on a Sunday morning. Why do we compare ourselves to a church that's running 200 on a Sunday morning? Why don't we compare ourselves to a new church that's starting out and only running 10? Oh, look at us, we're running 50, they're only running 10. No, we always look at the one that's running 200, 300, or 100 or whatever. Why is it we always compare ourselves to something bigger?
Because I think we want to always see progress.
We want to be bigger.
Yeah.
And like I said the other day, I don't know whether that's a good idea or not. I always said, instead of having one church that's got 500, maybe you ought to have 5 churches that's got 100. If you got 500 people, you couldn't know everybody. I see these churches on TV, and we listen to a couple of them. They'll have 2,000 people in this auditorium or in this church, the sanctuary. The preacher can't know everybody. He can't even know a fourth of them or a fifth. He can't know all those people. Is that really a good idea? I think Russ pretty much knows all the people that regularly comes to church. Mm-hmm. I think that we would be better. I think some of these churches would be better off if now I realize they got different pastors. They have a lead pastor that does most of the preaching, and they have other little pastors and small groups and stuff. But I don't know. You got this small group, this small group, this small group, and this small group. These people don't know these people. They don't know these people. They know my little 5, 10 people, 15 people. That's all the people. Out of 2,000 people, I know 15 of them. Well, what about the rest of them? Maybe you're lifestyle or maybe what you have to offer could benefit some of these other people. But because it's so large, you never have the opportunity. I'm getting off base.
I think we compare, like you said, you were asked, why do we always compare to something bigger and feel bad? Well, I think that's inspired by the enemy.
That could be how.
Because when he wants to inspire us to feel proud, then he'll inspire us to compare ourselves to the ones that aren't doing as well.
I know when I play golf, I'd always like to play golf with somebody that's better than me. Seems to improve my golf game. Either that or I cheat and they don't know. No. I say I do better when I'm playing against somebody that's better than me. How can you get better if you're always playing somebody inferior?
Right. When we wistfully look at, like, well, boy, that church, they're at 200 or they have 300 or whatever. But you don't know everything else that's going on there, and you don't know the issues that might be there. Years and years ago, before I came to Taylorville, I was always one of 2 music teachers at a district. So I would be 5 through 12, every level of band,
Right.
and often some other stuff too. And a friend of mine who'd always taught at a bigger district. So, you need to get a bigger school, and then you'll have other band directors to knock ideas off of, and this and that and the other. Well, I did do that. I never had more trouble than in some of the early years here, when I had other people to knock ideas off of, because really I just got knocked around a lot. You don't know the problems that are inherent at other places, and benefits too, but
When I was in the credit union business, especially in this area, SEFCU was one of my clients, one of my credit unions I took care of. And I got to talking to, I'm friends with him on Facebook now, Eldon Arnold. And he was talking one time, he says, the only difference between my credit union and a $1 billion credit union and a $5 million credit union, on our balance sheet, we have more zeros out the end. They may have 2 zeros, we've got 6 zeros on our assets or whatever. So we're 10 times bigger than them. I have 10 times more headaches than they do too. I have 10 times more people to deal with, personalities that I have to deal with. I've got 10 times the headaches that a lot of these other people do. So don't say just because they're bigger that they're better. They may be. But like you said, we don't know what the internal strife is. We don't know what kind of culture that the church represents without being a part of it. And quite frankly, I don't think I would do good in a large church.
a lot of times at a small church, we look at a bigger church and we think, well, if we had a lot more people, there'd be a lot more people to do the work. But the reality is, there's more work, but the same percentage of people. It's the 80-20 principle.
It is.
Universal.
Yep.
I was going to say a little bit of defense on the big churches. I've learned this personally. When my son, who was 36 at the time, came down with colon cancer, and he went to Westside Christian Church. Mm-hmm. And we went up there, and they brought the elders, and they brought Eddie. He's the head preacher at that church. They came to Nathan's house. They all laid hands on Nathan and prayed for him. And 6 years later, we're still cancer-free. So, I mean, I think that they got a network.
Right.
They have to have a network.
There's nothing wrong with the big church.
Right.
No,
It's
not.
different.
It's just
different, but yeah.
And it takes a
Take
certain
pride in this church.
right. It takes a certain personality to be a part of that church, to a large church like that.
But and I'm not putting down what you're saying, but as we've been told, our God does not need us at all. He can do it all himself.
Right.
But he can use each one of us to do our thing, to do what you say has been done at the bigger churches. But we can do that same thing right here.
Absolutely.
With his Holy Spirit.
Look at.
I'm saying it's a one-on-one ministry. It's our witness to one person at a time.
Right.
It doesn't, size has nothing to do with it. We got to win people for Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, whether we do it in this little church or we do it in a big church.
Exactly.
That's what we're supposed to
It's
do.
a micro mission thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all have our own.
We have a little different way here doing it than some of those do. Some of them have to put a show on. I told a friend of mine that I also went to church that he doesn't go where I was going at either right now. And I told him this afternoon, I said, it's been a long time since I took a hymnal out of a pew and read a responsive reading standing up. And it reminded me of my Bethel Baptist days when I used to go out there several years ago when I was a kid, but that felt pretty good.
Yeah.
And so it's not about pride, it's just you're doing the right thing.
You know, and I think, well, I'm not trying to say anything bad, but I think we're getting back to the basics.
Yeah.
And that's what we needed.
You just didn't leave the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, praise is to God. He's the audience of our praise. It's not about a light show. That's why I got so aggravated. All those I got sons that go to several of them big churches, and they got the big lights, and they turn the lights out. See, the audience isn't even sing. Well, the praise is everybody's heart going up to God. It has nothing to do with lights. Yeah. It's God, and He knows. But that's what really frustrates me is. And I even told that guy we even leave the lights on at this church. So.
And a lot of the newer churches don't have any windows in the sanctuary, so that they control the lighting and stuff.
Oh, it's a show. I mean, and they've actually have huge conferences. We had a worship leader that went. Well, I know you because you're a worship leader. You've probably been to those conferences. It's all about the light show. It's all about the ambiance.
Hey, guy
You
refers.
didn't even mention the fog machine.
Huh?
You didn't even mention the fog machine.
Yeah, well, they got that at West Side.
Haggai refers 14 times in his prophecy as the Lord Almighty, the God who commands the armies of heaven. What effect might this have had on a discouraged nation that felt too weak for the task before them? Well, I put down that legions of angels could be called at their disposal. The God of the angel armies. If we're discouraged because Satan is attacking us or doing something to cause us to be discouraged, if we call to God, don't you think that He could send one angel if He had to dispel the demons that are attacking us? But I think sometimes we want to handle it ourselves. We don't want to bother God. Well, you got more important things. You got all these people in Ukraine and Russia. You got all these people. No, it's hard to understand, but God gives His undivided attention to me when I was praying for physical strength to work on that house. He has as much concern about that as He does about the people that are fighting and dying in Ukraine, the people that are fleeing Ukraine with little babies. It's unimaginable to me how God could care for every individual in the world like they're the only one in the world. And He does.
And the answer to that is, as much junk as we've got going on in this world, He still hasn't destroyed this world.
That's true. Yet.
You know, and it should have, even back in those days, gave them a sign of relief, because they've learned that they didn't have to depend on their might,
Right.
His might.
His might.
Yeah.
And
We just forgot.
exactly, they had forgot about
Always
all
forget.
that.
The Israelites back then didn't have a temple, and yet they had God's presence. They didn't need a building, or they didn't need to bring I can't even read the typing. I know my eyes are getting better, but they didn't need the bling, that's why I couldn't see it, of a new building to attract the power, presence, and purpose of God. Like we was talking about some of these fancy churches. You don't need all of that to get God's presence. It's like we have to do all of this so that God will come and visit us. But He's here already.
Amen.
He's already declared to them, that they are his own precious people. He was already with them. Have you believed that the lie that you can't access God's power, presence, or purpose because your kingdom contribution doesn't seem as spectacular as it once was, or as someone else's? We have to make sure that we don't play the comparison game. And then, like I said earlier, why do we always compare ourselves to somebody bigger, or in our eyes, better? The people were seeing the natural realm. The building wasn't going to be as marvelous as the previous one. God was seeing the spiritual realm. He knew the ultimate eternal result of what the people were building in this world would be bigger and more glorious than anything they could imagine. He was accomplishing incredible things in them and through them. He wanted to draw their attention back to the real prize, his presence. And it's still true today. If we look hard enough, we can find God's presence. Could you ask God to help you see your work for his church the way he sees it? That is hard. To see, to love people the way God loves people. Ooh, there's some unlovable people out there. We've even met some of them sometime in our life. I will skip on down here a little bit. God promises to be with his people in their work of rebuilding the temple. In Exodus 3, God promises to be with Moses as he petitions Pharaoh for the freedom of the Hebrew slaves. How are Moses' fears similar to the fears expressed by God's people rebuilding the temple? Well, personally, I think they was looking at circumstances through human eyes and missing out on what God is seeing in our future. As I said this morning, God sees the past, the present, and the future all the same. And that's something that I can't understand.
I think,
go ahead.
Honey, they always thought they had to do it, and God wasn't asking them to do it. He was asking them to trust him in what he wanted to do.
So I was going to find something here, if I can find it. There we go. I think. I thought I knew where it was. It should be right there. In Joshua, the first chapter. Now it came about after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' servant. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, cross the Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, to the sons of Israel. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I have given it to you, just as I spoke to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, as far as the great sea, toward the setting of the sun, will be your territory. No man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give to them. God's promise to be with Joshua as he was with Moses. And with Moses, he talked to God face to face. Joshua would also be against hostile cultures, but God's command is clear. Do not be afraid. Oh, that we could truly believe that we could go out in the power of God, not in our own strength. You can translate that as, do not fear, because I am with you, into your current involvement in the work of building God's church in your culture context. We are to build a church, not a temple. Is there someone in your life who needs this reminder? We talk about things that we thought would last forever. How many of you remember getting the Sears catalog about that thick every year. And then they would come out with the wish book, where it was Montgomery Ward, Sears, Woolworth, Kresge's, all of these things. We figured they would last forever. They're all gone. The only thing that is really, well, it says dynasties come and go, corporations, businesses come and go. The church is the only organization in the world that comes with a guarantee. Hell can do its best. Jesus will continue to build his church. And I could add, with or without our help. Any comments, questions, donations? Anything? Rachel, would you say prayer for us, please?
Lord, thank you for this time together, for these people that come and the insights and the things that Don shares and that we share with each other. I just thank you so much for this family. That you would encourage us, help us to see what it is you want us each to do, what person we should talk to, or whatever it is we need to do tomorrow, each day, to build your church, your kingdom. Help us to be faithful, that you be with our families and friends that aren't here tonight or that aren't where they should be, Lord. Pray that you would draw them to you, use other people to touch them, help them to know how much you love them. We love you so much. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Cool.
It goes as good as this other. They walked me out.